Joining us now is Scott Paul. He's the director of the American Manufacturers Association. Scott, good to have you with us here live in Cleveland. Thanks. We had some issues going on earlier. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, John, thanks for squeezing me in. I know that you care deeply about these issues, so I'm glad we have a chance to have a conversation about it.
Look, no question about it. And I do care deeply. And what we're going to talk about in the next 10 minutes really is one of the key issues, Scott, that is going to be the centerpiece of Trump's campaign tonight. I've been saying this for a couple of weeks. If you're concerned about the deterioration of the United States manufacturing base, if you're concerned about American jobs going away, and if you don't see a way out, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, liberal, or conservative, what party stripe you are, because at the end of the day, if you've lost your job or your manufacturing plant is shut down and you can't support your family, it doesn't matter what your ideology happens to be or what your party affiliation is. You have to bring these jobs back to the United States. And as you know, you look at the trade deficit in May. I mean, it was $60 billion. That's $720 billion annualized. That's 4% of our entire GDP getting shipped out. We had one of your associates on earlier. We've got China dumping steel in the United States at 4.5 times our production, subsidized under cost by the communist government, and that people can understand why wages are down and jobs are going away, Scott.
Yeah, it's the fundamental laws of economics and the challenges that theories like Adam Smith's invisible hand or David Ricardo's comparative advantage, they sound great in a textbook, but when you're competing against the Chinese government, you got to kind of throw them out the window. And I think that's something certainly Trump understands and has been forceful in talking about. I've been kind of struck, however, by the paucity of the conversation about this so far at the convention. And Eric Trump mentioned the trade deficit last night. I think Ted Cruz actually alluded to Obama exporting jobs. But other than that, there hasn't been a big conversation. So hopefully Trump will be able to articulate point of views on this, because I know it's something, if not the Republican establishment wants to hear, certainly Republican voters, independent voters, Democratic voters, they want to hear the message. They want change on trade. They want jobs.
Scott, look, I mean, we've gone 3 days with this convention. It's not been mentioned one time. That is a big disappointment to me. I've been saying for a year now, you're not going to beat Hillary Clinton and the Democrats based on emails, Benghazi, or trust her, this or that. And I get a lot of this convention has been blasting Hillary. You got to set the stage for that. But at the end of the day, it's not going to win this election for Trump. The way that Trump wins is by telling the truth about how our American manufacturing base has been sold out, how our jobs have been sold out by the globalist elite ruling class network who goes across the globe scouring it for slave labor, and then both parties are part of the problem because they're getting the money to foment those policies. And nobody cares about the American worker except Trump and a handful of people. That is what is so upsetting to so many of us. And here we've gone 3 days, and somebody might have mentioned it in passing. I mean, that should have been the theme of this convention. Am I right?
Well, you're right. And I was struck by something I saw on Politico, where Larry Kudlow and Stephen Moore were talking to Politico about their economic advice to Trump and how they're revising his tax plan. But they also said they're trying to nudge him away from his trade policies. And so I'm just saying, if Stephen Moore, Larry Kudlow are the guys that are going to be guiding Trump's trade policy, it's going to move far, far away from where it was at that speech that he gave on June 28th in Menneson, Pennsylvania, where he outlined the challenges of free trade and why we need tariffs on Chinese steel and why we need a better deal on all of this.
Look, we need a better deal, but the thing is, we've got to stop. The first thing, we talk about stopping these trade deals, Scott, like NAFTA, which has been a complete disaster for us. Now the Trans-Pacific trade partnership going down. But, we talk about those in terms of it's a bad deal. What we really need to talk about is what is going on with the globalist elite ruling class on Wall Street that basically controls production through funding campaigns and selling out the American worker. Here's the other thing we haven't talked about, Scott, that I know you're going to agree with me on. The number of work visas and HB1 and HB2 visas that we allow cheap labor flowing into the country unabated, unchecked. Millions of these people driving down U.S. wages. The only group that benefits from this are a certain elite set of corporate elitists, basically, that are able to decrease their cost of production. Meantime, who gets screwed is the middle American worker. And that's the issue. To simply sit there and say, well, I can make a better deal, that doesn't matter if we don't explain to the American people what has really gone on here.
Yeah, I would argue that about 30 years ago, there was this bipartisan elite consensus that we should surrender on manufacturing. And you're right, focus on finance, John. Mm-hmm. And finance has become the master of the economy, and finance doesn't care where the jobs are. Finance doesn't care if there's a middle class. And as long as it's doing well, it thinks the rest of America is doing well. Meanwhile, it runs us into recessions, and it's created all sorts of these other problems in the social fabric of America. So I think what you've seen, and I know we've talked about this, the fact that this message resonated Republican voters didn't surprise Donald Trump. It didn't surprise you. But all the other elites were like, wait, what's going on here? How can this be? How this has been turned on its head? And it's really a wonderful and amazing thing to see. And all I'm saying is that I hope it continues. I remember Obama back in 2008 talked a really tough game on trade during the primaries, and then he shifted, and obviously he's negotiating the Trans-Pacific Partnership, trying to get it passed through Congress. And so he's shifted gears on all of that. And I don't know what Hillary Clinton's going to do. She's talked tough about it during the primaries. Is the same thing going to happen? And that's why I want to keep talking about this. We're going to keep our activists out in the field. We need to be vigilant in making sure the candidates know that middle-class voters expect change. They want a different trade policy.
Well, Scott, this is a movement in America. It's a middle-class, working-class movement that the elites don't understand. I got to tell you, Ted Cruz doesn't understand it. Ken Cuccinelli doesn't understand it. John Kasich doesn't understand it. The whole Bush family, they don't get it. And look, when people don't understand something, Scott, what do? They're afraid of it. They want it to go away. They want to get back to their comfort zone, which is the big donor base, the bundlers, the people they know. Jeb Bush running around raising $150 million for his PAC in 2 months, going through his Rolodex. That's the world they live in. That's what they understand. They don't understand this movement. They don't understand that middle America is standing up. They want their jobs back. They want their country back. They want their work back. They want to make things in America. They want to rebuild the infrastructure. And they know that they've been sold out by the ruling class. And this is a nonpartisan issue. It's both sides of the aisle. They're all in it together, and it's a cabal. And hopefully Trump tonight can lay this out and break it up.
Yeah. I want to say that I've heard that there are a number of Republicans who believe that Trump has changed the debate on trade within the policy. And now, instead of being marginalized, his position, I think there's some understanding that they have to embrace it. And it's not just, quote unquote, educating the public about the benefits of free trade. That's what the problem is. It's actually the problem is free trade and the way that it's implemented itself. I don't know if you're seeing that change on the ground, but that's one thing that I'm hoping will be carried out of this convention.
All right, Scott, we're going to find out tonight. You keep fighting this battle with me. We've been lonely voices on the horizon. I want to thank Scott Paul for being with us. He is the head honcho of the American Manufacturers Association. Scott, it's always an honor to have you on, man. Anytime. We got to keep this fight moving.
You bet, John. Keep it up.